Hello and most welcome to 1935 of the series. We will today continue with Wittgenstein and the dualism of the inner and the outer by Hao Tang. Hao Tang. Last time we went through, we took a gander or a more decisive look at a new solution to the problem suggested, or a new approach suggested by Hao Tang. How to go from the sensuous to conceptual, and to see that there is a matter of degree and no sharp differences really can be depicted. He baptized that the expressive function of language, a word used exclusively in this article, and it's a sort of an expression of one's sensuous state. A sort of doing, you just do it. And it ranges from saying ouch in pain, yuck in disgust, and then go to interjections like how blue the sky is, or even sarcasm, that's very nice of you. That could be gratitude. And here it's easier to understand that there is no division between the something sensuous or something conceptual. By this, Wittgenstein is questioning, Wittgenstein and Hao Tang are questioning the intellectualist idea of language. And that is that language expresses thoughts. The sole purpose of language is to convey thoughts. I most definitely say that is a rather dominant idea, the domineering idea without a doubt. And this is what we are going to bring up today. And this is a dualism that springs forth, that now will be approached in a quite new way, called in the subchapter 4, where I will start today, another diagnosis, the object and designation model. We can go some distance toward gaining a more detailed understanding of intellectualism about language by relating the diagnosis on the dualism of the inner and the outer in paragraph 304b to another diagnosis by Wittgenstein on the same. On the same.
Same.
This diagnosis, as we shall see, looks quite different from, but is in fact substantially the same as the diagnosis in paragraph 304b. Both point to intellectualism about language as the cause of the dualism. Of the dualism!
Dualism.
This other diagnosis occurs in a passage that is closely connected to paragraph 304, namely paragraph 293. If I say of myself that it is only from my own case that I know what the word pain means, must I not say the same of other people too? And how can I generalize the one case so irresponsibly? Now someone tells me that he knows what pain is only from his own case. Suppose everyone had a box with something in it. We call it a beetle. Beetle.
Beetle. Beetle. Beetle.
No one can look into anyone else's box. And everyone says he knows what a beetle is only by looking at his beetle. His beetle. Here, it would be quite possible for everyone to have something different in his box. In the box. In the box. One might even imagine such a thing constantly changing. But suppose the word beetle had a use in these people's language. If so, it would not be used as the name of a thing. The thing in the box has no place in the language game at all, not even as a something. For the box might even be empty. No one can divide through by the thing in the box. It cancels out whatever it is. Indeed, whatever it is. That is to say, if we construe the grammar of the expression of sensation on the model of object and designation, then the object drops out of consideration as irrelevant. 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 Irrelevant.
Irrelevant.
What Wittgenstein is attacking in paragraph 293 in his well-known parable of a box-carrying tribe is the conception of a sensation as a private object. Here, concretized into the beetle in the box, his prescription for this disease is to stop using the object and designation model on sensations and their expression. This diagnosis, strictly speaking, is not quite right. For as McDowell points out in a Freudian vein, the model of object and designation is really just the object and concept structure, and as such is as applicable to inner objects as to outer objects. Indeed! Outer objects.
Outer.
Outer! For example, when someone describes his sporadic but persistent lower back pains to a doctor, this is surely a case of giving intellectual expression to one's sensation and involves using the object and designation model.
Model.
Model. But charity and respect for Wittgenstein require us to look for a better diagnosis hereabouts, if not in, then behind paragraph 293C. I think there is such a diagnosis, and it is substantially the same as the diagnosis in 304b. But these two diagnoses seem very different. Different. Different.
Different.
Both with respect to disease and with respect to the prescription. First, the disease identified in 293, the idea of a private object does not appear to have the structure of a false dilemma. The structure of the disease identified in 304. Secondly, the prescriptions seem even more remote from each other. For what does the model of object and designation have to do with the intellectualist conception of language?
Language.
Language. Despite these appearances, however, the two diagnoses are in fact substantially the same. The same. We can see this with some help from McDowell. McDowell. First, as McDowell points out in a Sellarsian vein. Sellarsian vein. Sellarsian way of the two horns of the false dilemma, the idea of a private object is Wittgenstein's real enemy, a much greater enemy than behaviorism and the real cancer in the false dilemma. So these two labels, the false dilemma and the idea of a private object, label substantially the same disease in this context. In this context, in parenthesis, I think it's a good one. I'll read this. Once we fall into the idea of a private object, it is easy to be led into the false dilemma. For the outer aspects of sentience, that is the behavioral manifestation of sensation. Constantly and loudly demands acknowledgement, and acknowledging it while retaining the idea of a private object can easily generate a false dilemma between this idea and behaviorism. So the false dilemma is incipient in the idea of a private object. Private object. Private object. Privateness and objects, where are they? Indeed. This substantial sameness of disease allows us to recast the two diagnoses in parallel. To avoid the false dilemma, the disease, we need to reject the intellectualist conception of language. The intellectualist conception all language. Intellectualist. The prescription in 304. To avoid the false dilemma, the disease, we need to stop using the object and designation model on sensations and their expressions, the prescription in 293. This parallel is so far merely formal, because the prescriptions do not look alike. One wants to repeat the challenge. What on earth does the model of object and designation have to do with the intellectualist conception of language? The answer is a great deal. A great deal. For the object and designation model is absolutely fundamental to our language, and its use is an intellectual use of language par excellence. This becomes clear when we recall McDowell's Phrygian point that the object and designation structure is just the object and concept structure. This structure is the very backbone of our language and thought. It is so basic that even trying to state it can lead us into deep embarrassment or peculiar nonsense. Nonsense! Nonsense of a peculiar character. Nonsense. Now, there is a serious impediment arising from certain superficial features of our language, in particular English. Seeing how basic the object and designation model is. In English, in contemporary English, contemporary English, object very often means physical objects. Like stones and stone houses, which I have been calling outer objects. In this sense of object, it is a stretch to call an apparition an object. Yeah, definitely. A degradation to call a person an object, and an absurdity to call a number an idea, or a purpose an object indeed. The prevalence of this sense of object in contemporary English, it seems, has misled some readers into thinking that when Wittgenstein implicates the model of object and designation, he is warning us against conceiving sensations on the model of physical objects. Objects. But such a reading trivializes his target because it is hardly tempting to model sensations on physical objects. 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 However, object need not to be taken in the sense of physical object, prevalent as this sense is. Even in contemporary English, we still speak of an apparition as a ghostly object, a number as a mathematical object, a man as an object of admiration, and an idea as an object of ridicule. Ridicule. The word object is sometimes also used to mean purpose, as in, with what object has this war been prosecuted? These uses are perhaps not common now, but they are perfectly genuine. They are more common in older English, perhaps especially in older British English. However, things are with English, the corresponding German word Gegenstand, which is much less at the mercy of its sense as a physical object. It is true that this sense is also prevalent in German and in Wittgenstein. But there is also a well-established use of Gegenstand in an extremely thin sense, in which it means topic or subject or subject matter. This sense is found not only in philosophical terminology, but also in ordinary German. German, Deutsch, jawohl. Some examples from the PI itself, written in ordinary German, will be telling. In the preface, Wittgenstein speaks of his investigations as concerning many subjects as proceeding from one subject Gegenstand to another. One particular subject is just the privacy of pains, which he calls a Gegenstand in 253. See. Ursäkta mig.
Nej, ja, det är en som har bokat rummet klockan 12.
Hej.
Så och hon väntar där uppe. Mm.
Jag avslutar och återkommer.
Ja,
Ursäkta mig.
tack, ingen fara.
Gisses.
Yes, I heard the problem.
Ge mig ett ögonblick här. Jag ska se vad som har hänt.
Usch.
Vad konstigt. Jag pausar här. Well, we have to stop here preemptively, but I will get back as soon as I can. I'm very sorry for this. Bye bye for now.